Hi everyone, Justin here. Just for those people who missed the session last night on the Year 6 camp, the Outback Safari, we understand there's a number of people who couldn't get there. Thanks so much for the people who could come with us. It certainly allowed a lot of discussion and questions around the way the camp is being managed and the risk management processes that we've got in place as well. This next message is really for everyone and just explain the changes which happened actually 2 years ago from the Year 6s going to Canberra to going out west to Longreach and Winton. At that particular point, everyone knows COVID restrictions were a real challenge. Border crossings were impossible. And at that point, we decided to change to something in Queensland. It didn't go ahead in 2020. It was ready to go ahead in 2021, but unfortunately a snap lockdown closed the opportunity off to do that. These sorts of things are not a 2 or 3 week planning event. They really are a 12-month event, and it's something that we've obviously been planning for really 2 years now. And we look forward to going on the 7th of August with all of our students and our staff that are going as well. In terms of Canberra, look, at the moment, airports and border crossings are a real challenge still in terms of risk management. And the other really significant factor with travelling to somewhere like Canberra and having to use airfares is we're probably talking maybe $400, maybe more on top of the camp costs. So to see this blow out to a $1,200-$1,300 trip is really something that is not an affordable opportunity for all of our families. So at this stage, we're doing a review of this and talking to the kids about the experience at the end of the trip in August. But it is likely that we'll continue to do this for another year or two at least, and we'll see how that goes. But certainly looking forward to a really wonderful trip with all of our students. So there is a number of slides here. I won't talk to all of them in detail. It's more so the end of the slideshow that is probably really important. So firstly, permission forms, costs, all that information has gone home. If you haven't seen that, please just yell out to info@Norfolk Village SS. You know that email, and we can help you out with that. The costs have been significantly reduced by securing a subsidy. That subsidy is actually really, really valuable if we stay in Queensland, which is another great reason to be heading out west. In terms of staffing, look, it's really difficult for us to tell you exactly who is going at the moment because we aren't exactly sure on all the kids that are going. We will be looking at a staffing ratio of about 1 staff member to roughly 10 to 12 students. So, and then on top of that, we've got the staff from Kangaroo Bus Lines who are running the tour for us, who'll be present and are able to help in some capacity with that as well. Again, once we know that in more detail, we'll be able to talk to you all about that. So again, the company that we're using is Kangaroo Bus Lines, a really reputable company, and in fact the same company that we were using when we were venturing to Canberra. Just some quick details of them. Quite a big company, well respected, and have got a wonderful reputation for supporting schools in trips such as this. Again, their buses, first class gear, and they're certainly making sure that everyone is very comfortable inside, and they manage their driving and fatigue as per the national transport regulations. In terms of travelling in a bus, we know that it's a big trip, and we know that can certainly be a bit of a worry in terms of travel sickness. These tips and hints are really, really important. So we will talk to you ahead of the time about diet prior to getting on the buses. But certainly staying still, loose clothing is a really great idea. No snacks, etc. on the bus, and water only on the bus as well. And some small hand luggage. We'll talk to you a little bit more about that throughout the slides as well. So packing your big bags, so sports and duffel bags are preferred. Hard type suitcases, the airport type suitcases are not ideal because they don't squash and squish, and the bus guys really need to be able to jam all of the gear in underneath, and having that flexibility on a duffel type bag is certainly better. Have a look at the list of things that you need to bring with the permission forms, the clothing, toiletries, etc., and your bedding, the mattress, air mattress, sleeping bag, and the pillow. Small bag, pretty simple. A small backpack, water bottle, your pillow will be on board, maybe a travel blanket that they will be travelling through the night, some tissues, some reading material, card games, a hat, and a jacket because the mornings get cold, bearing in mind that we'll travel on Sunday night and they will be getting off the bus and they won't be able to get into their luggage underneath necessarily. So that little backpack needs to have all of those things, including that jacket for when they get out in the cool mornings out west. So just some Q&As, seatbelts are there. We've got plenty of sick bags on board if we need them. The drivers are all blue card authorised and they will cater for dietary requirements. So Kangaroo will actually be carting all of the cooking and meal gear with them, including a chef, and can cater for those things as they need to. Just in terms of the tents, so it'll be 2 people per tent. And the reason for that single airbed is because of that centre pole you can see in the photo there. And it actually allows a bit of room to throw the bags in the middle and have a bit of room to live in while we're camped out at Longreach. So we'll be camped at the ski club on the Thompson River, just outside of Longreach. A really nice venue. It will be us and only us out there. There is male and female amenities and there's a nice big covered area there, as you can see, for the dining and activities. Just a quick pick of the tents as they're set up. They will be split up in a bit of a boy-girl type scenario. The kids that are in the tents together will stay in those tents together. We will talk about who is going to be in tents much later on. We actually need to be certain of who is going before we can talk about who is going to be with who in tents. So it's likely that their tent buddy will also be their bus buddy as well, and those seats will stay the same on the buses to help us manage the risks that are still around regarding COVID. Just some key messages: swags are not allowed. They are too big and they don't fit in the bus and don't work in the tent. You need to check your airbag. There will be some spares and even some patches, etc., that the bus guys will have with us if we need to. Your airbed and your sleeping bag can just be placed in a pillowcase and have that marked. It's a lot easier to roll it up sometimes. We know sleeping bags and airbags can be pretty difficult to manage. Bring along a change of clothes and toiletry bag in your day bag for the first day of travel to refresh after that night travel. As I said before, the large bags under the bus won't be available till later that afternoon when we get into Longreach to set up camp. You don't need to worry about food. There'll be plenty available both when we're at camp and whilst we're on the road during the daytime as well. So again, just a reminder to have a look at that equipment list. No cameras or devices. So security is not great in terms of where we're going to be. So we don't want those expensive devices. We don't want to have to carry and manage 120 devices and there'll be nowhere to charge them and nowhere to connect to Wi-Fi really either. So we will take plenty of photos. We will post to Facebook as often as we can. And when we get back from camp, we will actually share all of those photos with you as well. We do encourage your kids to take some spending money. There was a bit of a conversation last night about taking your cards, free cards, etc. Look, there's no real problem with that. Just bear in mind a couple of things. If you are taking spending money and you are thinking about $50, split it into smaller denominations. If we have 130 odd people drop at a small town, a little corner store, they might not have the cash float to be splitting 50s, so break that up a little bit as well. If you want to consider cards, that's fine, but maybe consider a balance, or a little bit of cash and some card type money if that's what you want, just if we stop to get a drink or an ice block along the way. And the great thing about that is we can support some of those little businesses in rural Queensland that really do appreciate our support. So in terms of risk assessments, we have gone to great lengths to make sure that all the venues that we're visiting have got risk assessments and they've provided them to us, and the same goes for the COVID safety plans. The next part is really important, and I spoke about this last night in terms of contingency plans in case of illnesses or emergency. So I think the first thing to really bear in mind is that we've always gone to camps and kids have always got sick or broken bones and they've always had to be picked up. I guess the difference is now that we've got COVID to deal with and the restrictions that go with that if we happen to have positive cases. So the good news is that at the moment we don't have any close contact isolation rules that will impact us, we don't think, by the time we get to camp in August. So that's a really huge relief. There is still a risk that a child could develop symptoms for COVID and might need to seek medical assistance because of that. So there's a couple of things that I spoke about last night that we can do there. So we will have supplies of rat tests with us, and they'll be the saliva type tests, the oral type tests. So if your child develops symptoms, there's a couple of things that we'll do. The first thing is we'll call you. If you're comfortable with us to help the child administer the rat test, then we'll do that and we'll manage what the outcome of that is from there. If you're not so comfortable with that, we'll present them to a medical facility or a hospital, and we'll work through that with there. Bearing in mind, everyone knows what it's like with COVID at the moment. If you've got symptoms, then there's a great deal of caution that's exercised around that. If we get into a situation where your child develops any sort of symptoms that mean that they can't be on camp, we are going to have to consider how we get that child home. So I actually will be driving, and that'll give us a vehicle to be able to manage that, and it'll be working with you guys as parents about how we best manage that, which really does sort of lead into that travel insurance note. So not mandatory that you do this, but certainly something you may wish to consider, given that there is a risk that we could go away with some people and they could develop symptoms, and we could have some children or staff who actually need to isolate. So the travel insurance component will certainly cover that. We're not going to recommend anyone for you. We would just recommend you go to your travel agent and have a discussion about that. So if we were in a situation where we had a number of students that needed to isolate, we would simply work with Queensland Health and the Education Department and come up with a scenario to support that if that was the case. So we will obviously have phones, and we'll be able to contact you all. We'll have all your contact details and be able to manage that as we do. What we do know is that since the restrictions have eased and we've been able to do school camps, the Kangaroo Bus Lines haven't had any issues like this. The really important thing to understand is that if any of your children have got any symptoms as we go to get on the bus, they cannot come. So even though it might look mild, if we have a situation where that one child gets on a bus and those kids are on a bus together overnight, that there's a risk of transmission and contagious symptoms spreading and us having a real problem. So whilst we don't want to deny children the ability to go to camp, the current health regulations that exist for schools still apply to excursions. So any symptoms, it's stay at home. The same goes for camp. If that was to occur, we would refund to you as much as we possibly can, based on the fact that as we get to that point, that there is certain pieces of those camp costs that we can't get money back for. Again, if you consider travel insurance, that may be able to help you out with that. So again, we will take other measures into consideration if we need to. We'll be travelling with masks. So again, if we've got children who are developing symptoms and we can't get to a medical facility immediately, we will ask the children to wear masks and to protect themselves and protect others if that was the case. So again, being seated on the same bus in the same seats just allows us to do a bit of tracing if there is any issues that come to light. What we do know is that as time goes on, the restrictions ease, and it does get easier and easier and easier for us to do these things. So we hope by August that there's more so the case as well. So look, if you've got any questions really from this point forward, you can either email myself, your classroom teachers, or Mrs. Caswell, and we'll be able to help you out as best as we can. Again, there's a little bit of anxiety that we heard the other night around who's sleeping with who in which tent. We just need some time to understand who's going before we can make those decisions. I know that kids want to know that. We aren't ready to do that yet because we don't know who is going yet. And similarly for staff, until we know how many kids are going, it's really difficult for us to determine how many staff are going to go. For those of you who don't want your kids to go, or the children don't want to go, there will be supervision provided back at school by our staff. That program will be a bit alternative, and generally when kids don't go to camp, we provide a bit of an alternative type scenario back at school for the kids that allows them to experience some of the same sorts of things, but while not being there. So but they'll be as simple as some activities or those sorts of things. We certainly won't be looking at excursions or any other trips at that time. It's if you're either at camp or you're back at school, engaged in some alternative types of learning. So thanks for your time. I know there's a bit of a lengthy type video, but the easiest way that we get that information out, given what we had to do last night and what you all need to know regarding camp. Thanks so much. Bye.